My ex-wife used our daughter's DNA test to fake a terminal illness and frame me for her murder. Now, the police are at my door, and I have 48 hours to prove I'm not a monster. I always thought my divorce from Rita 8 years ago was, if not amicable, at least civilized. We'd built a functional, if somewhat distant, co-parenting relationship for our 15-year-old daughter, Margot. We attended parent-teacher conferences without bloodshed, exchanged curt but necessary emails about schedules, and I even managed a stiff smile at her wedding to Adrian 2 years ago. He seemed like a decent guy, a steadying influence after the emotional whirlwind that was Rita. Our daughter, Margot, liked him well enough, though she never quite warmed to his son, Derek, a sullen 18-year-old who viewed our bright, artistic Margot with a mixture of disdain and boredom. The first crack in his fragile peace appeared on a Tuesday. Margot called me from Rita's house, her voice trembling. "Dad? Mom's. She's really sick." My initial reaction was a cynical sigh. Rita had a history of minor ailments becoming dramatic operas when it suited her. "What is it this time, sweetie? A migraine? The flu?" "No," Margot whispered, and the fear in her voice was palpable. It's serious." She got some test results back. She said it's genetic. She said I need to be tested too. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. Genetic. The word hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Tested for what? She won't say. She's crying all the time. Adrian looks like a ghost. And Derek, he just stays in his room. I drove over there immediately. The house, usually pristine to the point of sterility under Adrian's influence, felt claustrophobic and still. Rita was on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and drawn. She looked small. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine pang of concern that wasn't immediately quashed by resentment. "Rita," I said, my voice softer than I'd intended. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and swimming in tears. "It's Huntington's," she breathed, the words barely audible. The genetic test confirmed it. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for both of you." The floor seemed to drop away. Huntington's disease, the cruel, neurodegenerative monster that steals your mind and body, a death sentence passed down through generations. My mind raced. Did she have a family history? I couldn't recall one, but the raw, gut-wrenching terror on her face felt terrifyingly real. "Margot," I stammered. "The test for her?" "I've already scheduled it," Adrian said from the doorway, his voice hollow. "We have to know." The next week was a blur of suffocating dread. Margot was silent, withdrawn, clinging to me. The day of her blood draw, she held my hand so tightly her knuckles were white. We were told it would take 2 weeks for the results. 2 weeks of watching Rita deteriorate. She began stumbling, her speech occasionally slurring. She claimed the symptoms were progressing with terrifying speed. She showed us pamphlets, websites, all detailing the grim prognosis of Huntington's. Adrian was her devoted caretaker, his face a mask of grim endurance. Derek became even more withdrawn, a storm cloud brewing in the corner of every room. I was drowning in helplessness. My hatred for Rita had melted away, replaced by a profound, aching pity. This was the mother of my child. She was facing a horrific end. All our past conflicts seemed petty and meaningless. Then the results came from Margot. They were delivered to Rita's house. She called me, her voice a broken sob. She has it. Oh, God, she has it too. The gene is expanded. She's going to get sick. I collapsed into a kitchen chair, the world dissolving into a silent, screaming void. My daughter, my bright, beautiful girl. It was unthinkable. But in the depths of that despair, a tiny, cold ember of doubt began to flicker. It was the timing, the rapid progression, the lack of any known family history. And most of all, it was a look in Rita's eyes during a moment when she thought no one was looking. Amidst a performance of grief, I saw a flash of something else. Calculation. Triumph. I called the genetic counseling office, pretending to be Adrian, asking for a copy of the reports to be emailed for their records. The woman on the phone was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, sir, but we only have one test result under that address for a Rita Clements. There is no test result for a Margot Clements." My blood ran cold. There must be a mistake. The blood was drawn 2 weeks ago. "I'm looking at the file now, Mr. Clements. Only one test was processed. For your wife." I thanked her and hung up, my hand shaking. Rita had lied. Margot had never been tested. The results she described, the expanded gene, the certain onset, were a fiction. But why? What monstrous game was she playing? I drove to their house, a storm of fury and confusion brewing inside me. I was going to confront her, to expose the lie and demand to know why she would put our daughter through this hell. But when I arrived, the house was silent. The front door was unlocked. "Rita?" I called out. "Adrian." I found her in the master bedroom. She was on the floor, lying on her side. An empty bottle of prescription pills was clutched in her hand. A single, neatly folded piece of paper lay on the nightstand. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knelt, feeling for a pulse. Nothing. Her skin was cold. With trembling fingers, I picked up the note. It was her handwriting, elegant and looping, now a horrific suicide note. "I can't do this. I can't face what's to come. I can't bear the guilt of knowing I passed this curse on to my beautiful Margot. The thought of her future, it's too much. I've taken the easy way out. Please, tell Margot I love her more than life itself. And to my husband, Adrian, thank you for your strength. Forgive me." It was a perfect, tragic narrative. The terminally ill mother, choosing to end her suffering and unable to live with the guilt of dooming her child. I should have been weeping. I should have been mourning. But all I felt was a cold, creeping horror, because it was all wrong. The guilt she spoke of was for a lie she manufactured. Margot wasn't doomed. Rita wasn't sick. This wasn't a suicide. This was something else. I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I turned. Adrian stood in the doorway, his face ashen. His eyes moved from Rita's body to the pill bottle in my hand, to the note I was holding. "What have you done?" he whispered, his voice cracking with a grief that sounded terrifyingly real. "Adrian, no. I just found her like this." "You've always hated her," he cried out, his composure shattering. "You couldn't stand that she was happy with me. You were furious about the diagnosis. You thought she was lying. I heard you arguing on the phone last week. You said you'd make her pay for scaring Margot. It was true. I had said that in a moment of blind rage before I knew the full extent of her deception. But I never meant—" "Get out," Adrian snarled, pulling out his phone. "Get out of my house. I'm calling the police." I stumbled back, my mind reeling. This wasn't happening. I looked at Rita's lifeless form, at the perfectly staged scene, the lie about the illness, the fake test results, and now her death, arranged to look like a suicide fueled by a guilt that only existed because of her own deception, but framed to look like a motive for me. I had walked right into it. She hadn't just faked an illness. She had faked a motive for her own murder and laid the trap perfectly for me to spring it. I didn't wait for the police. I ran. I drove home in a blind panic, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. By the time I pulled into my driveway, 2 police cruisers were already there. Margot was standing on the porch, her face streaked with tears, a female officer's arm around her shoulders. She looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw not just grief, but a flicker of confusion and fear. She thinks I might have done it, I realized with a sickening lurch. Adrian had already called her, already planted the seed. The lead detective, a tall, grim man named Inspector Boras, was professionally courteous, but his eyes were flinty. "Sir, we need you to come down to the station to answer some questions about the death of your ex-wife, Rita Clements." "It's a setup," I said, my voice hoarse. "She wasn't sick. She faked the whole thing. The suicide note is a lie. We're aware of the medical situation, sir," Boris said calmly. "Mr. Adrian Clements informed us of her recent terminal diagnosis. It's a tragic situation all around. Now, please, come with us." They didn't arrest me. Not yet. They questioned me for hours. They went over my alibi. I had been home alone, working. They played a recording of the voicemail I'd left for Rita, my voice tight with anger. "If you're lying about this, Rita, I swear to God, you will regret it. You will pay for what you're doing to her." It sounded damning. So damning. They released me after 12 hours. But the warning was clear. Don't leave town. We'll be in touch. I was given 48 hours of precarious freedom. 48 hours to prove that a woman who had meticulously planned her own death as a final act of malicious lie was, in fact, murdered by someone else. But who? And why stage it like this? My first stop was Adrian. He refused to speak to me, slamming the door in my face. Derek peered at me from an upstairs window, his expression unreadable. I had to find the truth. I started with the genetic testing company. Posing as Adrian again, I pushed harder. I begged, citing the trauma of his wife's suicide. Finally, a sympathetic supervisor revealed more. The tests had been ordered online. The payment was made with a prepaid credit card. And the blood sample? It had been mailed in a self-collection kit, something that's not standard practice for diagnostic Huntington's testing. Rita had mailed in her own sample. There was no doctor's visit, no real diagnosis. She had orchestrated the entire medical drama from her computer. But why? What was the end game? Life insurance? I dug through old divorce records. I was the beneficiary of a small policy from our marriage, but it was a paltry sum. Adrian was the main beneficiary on her newer policies. A new, terrifying thought occurred to me. What if I wasn't the only target? What if Adrian wasn't on it? The devoted husband, suddenly facing the massive medical bills and emotional toll of a terminally ill wife and a stepdaughter who was also doomed. The insurance payout would be substantial, but he seemed genuinely grief-stricken, and he was the one who had pointed the finger directly at me. I needed to get into Rita's computer. I knew she used the same password for everything. Margot's birthday. It was a foolish habit I'd warned her about for years. Waiting until nightfall, I parked down the street from their house. Adrian's car was gone. Derek's was there. I saw the boy's silhouette in his room. Taking a chance, I called his phone. "What do you want?" he answered, his voice flat. "Derek, I need your help. I know you think I had something to do with this, but I didn't. Your stepmother wasn't sick. She was lying." There was a long silence. "I know," he said quietly. The admission stunned me. You know?" "She told me," he said. "A week ago. She made me promise not to tell Dad. She said she was doing it for us, for our family. She said the insurance money would set us up for life, get me through college, and that once the illness was over, we could be happy. She said she'd make it look like something else, an accident maybe. She never said anything about," his voice broke, "about killing herself and framing you." My mind was reeling. She had confided in him. She'd recruited her sullen, impressionable stepson into her web of lies. Derek, listen to me. She didn't kill herself. Someone else did. And they made it look like she did. I need to see her computer. I need to find out what she was planning. I heard a door slam downstairs. "Dad's back," Derek whispered urgently. the office computer. The password is Margot0214. The files are in a folder labeled HOA. He hung up. I now had a dire choice. Break into the house or lose my only chance. I chose to break in. While Adrian was in the kitchen, I slipped through the side gate and picked the lock on the office French doors, a skill from a misspent youth. My heart was a drum solo in my chest. I found the computer, typed in the password, and found the HOA folder. It was all there. Forged medical documents, research on Huntington's symptoms, insurance policies worth over $2 million, and emails to a man whose name I didn't recognize, discussing the final act and the payout. This was it. This was the proof that the illness was a scam. But it didn't prove who killed her. I needed to get this to the police. I plugged in a USB drive and started copying the files. A floorboard creaked behind me. I froze. I should have known you'd come back, Adrian's voice said, cold and dead. I turned slowly. He wasn't holding a weapon. He just looked tired, devastated. It's all here, Adrian, I said, my voice shaking. The whole lie. She was scamming you, too. The insurance money, she was going to fake her death, wasn't she? An accident. But someone beat her to it. Someone really killed her and used her plan. Adrian's shoulders slumped. He sank into a chair. I found out last night, he said, his voice a hollow whisper. I couldn't sleep. I came in here to pay bills. I found the folder. I confronted her. We had a huge fight. She laughed at me. She said I was too weak to understand that this was for Derek, for our future. She said she'd already mailed in the DNA test for Margot to make the story more believable for the insurance investigators. She was going to put your daughter through that hell for money. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with terrible pain. I was so angry. I've never been so angry in my life. I grabbed her. I shook her. She stumbled back, hit her head on the corner of the desk. He was sobbing now, great, heaving sobs. She wasn't moving. There was so little blood, but she was just gone. I panicked. I remember her suicide plan, the pills, the note she'd already written just in case. I staged it. I made it look like she'd done it. And when I saw you there, holding the note, it was a gift, a way out. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The truth was finally out, more tragic and twisted than I could have ever imagined. Rita's monstrous lie had driven her own husband to a moment of blind rage, an accidental killing that he then covered up by using the very fiction she created. The police arrested Adrian an hour later. I handed over the USB drive and my statement. The charges against me were dropped. The fallout was immense. Derek went to live with relatives out of state. Margot was shattered, not just by her mother's death, but by the horrific betrayal behind it. The woman she thought was dying for her had, in fact, been willing to torture her for profit. It was a wound that would take years to heal. We both started therapy. Slowly, painstakingly, we began to rebuild our lives on a foundation of truth, however ugly it was. I sold my house and moved us to a new town, a fresh start. A year later, the legal proceedings are over. Adrian is serving a reduced sentence for manslaughter and tampering with evidence. He writes to Margot sometimes, apologies that she never answers. I received a letter myself last week. It was from Adrian. He told me he's had a lot of time to think. He said that in his grief and panic, he'd missed something crucial. He said the email correspondence in the HOA folder, the one with the unknown man, that wasn't Rita's writing style. He'd read it again. He believed someone else was involved, guiding her, perhaps even putting an idea in her head. He thinks the person she was emailing was the real architect of the plan, and that person is still out there. I crumpled the letter and threw it away. Then After a long minute, I uncrumpled it and smoothed it out on my desk. Paranoia? Probably. The desperate rationalization of a guilty man? Almost certainly. But as I look out the window at Margot, laughing in the garden with a new friend from school, a cold shiver runs down my spine. Rita's lies are buried with her. Adrian is behind bars. But the seed of doubt once planted is a tenacious weed. What if it's not over?